Welcome to episode 157 of the Grip Strip Podcast, the NASCAR is Back edition of the Grip Strip Podcast. My name is Phillip Matthew. I'm your host, and I'm here with my co-host, the computer genius and iRacing Indy 500 champion. Had a chance at the iRacing Daytona 500 this weekend, but kind of likes Joey Logano or the RFK guys, or most of the field if you're in a Toyota in the actual 500. Unfortunately, the timing wasn't there. His name is Joshua Fine. What's going on, man?
Hey, I'm doing great, Phil. Of course, I did the iRacing Daytona 500, and yes, I was, like I said, trying to add to the virtual mantle there with the Indy 500 win from last year, and I came up short. I had two tries at it. They had throughout Wednesday. We'll get into it later, but they had several sessions starting on last Wednesday night, going through Sunday night, and I did the one on Saturday afternoon and the one Sunday morning. So the Saturday afternoon one finished fifth and tried to get through the last lap carnage, which I almost did and everything. And then the other one was pushing for the lead and with about 22 to go in the other one on Sunday morning, and got loose going into turn one and spun out and wrecked. So that's how it went. But Daytona, a lot harder to win on iRacing than the Indy 500, I think. And I think all my attempts in that one kind of show, it plays out just exactly like the real one. So I'm not really sure if it's art imitating life or life imitating art. So you pick your poison there. But the 500 itself and the rest of Speedwakes, typical Daytona, but it's a different feeling, I feel like, in a lot of ways. So just glad to get into it and digest it all tonight.
Yeah, we're gonna get into it, and it's something that I got text literally right after the race from my old podcast co-host from the NASCAR days and the the Speed Week days, Adam Ham. The term we coined on those shows came through. Richard won his first race in 5.5 years. 199 race winless streak is done. First win for JTG-Daugherty since AJ Adder-Allmendinger won at Watkins Glen, and that was
2014.
That's 9 years ago, like eight near 8.5 years ago. So a lot of losing streaks ended on Sunday night for the Daytona, what ended up being the Daytona 530, longest race ever. So because of all the extra laps, more or less, we'll get into the race. It's all we were talking about it offline. I mean, pretty clean up to about lap 183, and then the all hell broke loose sans like 1.5 cautions there. So we'll get into the 500. And we'll also get into the XFinity race, which saw repeat winner Austin Hill making a pass on Justin Allgaier and John Hunter Nemechek. So that'll be something we'll get into, along with some of the people that caused multiple wrecks, like Parker Kligerman. And Clayton Hughes was sitting there going off on his high horse because he seems like a real idiot. I'm glad that he doesn't work with Martin Truex anymore. He seems like a real douche. It's also interesting that Richard won because they announced that Miss Hummer is going to be back announcing 2 races. For what reason, I don't know. This is coming off of her going and being announced to be a part of the Indy 500 broadcast, which also makes no sense. Hold
on. Since you mentioned her, the fact that Stenhouse, the X, won, does that mean that Aaron Rodgers is going to win the Super Bowl next year because he was also Danica's ex?
Well, he went into the dark for 4 days, so that has to mean something. There has to be some innuendo involved with her. He's in his darkness retreat in a jail cell or whatever the hell he did. It sounds like he's going to go to the darkness, which is the Las Vegas Raiders or the Jets. So we'll see what happens with that. But that would be something if Aaron goes and wins a Super Bowl since Miss Hummer was connected to him too, since she fancies herself a great podcaster now, is a joke in itself. Zane Smith repeated in the Truck Series on Friday, and which was basically a cluster F of a deal, start stop. But Zane Smith starts this year the same way as he started last year, with a win. He got into the Daytona 500 somehow after having problems in Wednesday's qualifying, gets in the race on Thursday, and then gets a decent run. So something to look at there. KBM's trucks were really fast, so Chevys. Something to look at. Will that continue starting a couple of weeks from now when Kyle Busch jumps into the 51 truck for the first time as a Chevy in many years, since the Billy Baloo days, I think, probably. Then we'll go through all the picks that we made. We'll also go through some of the bets. A lot of L's because we picked Ryan Blaney. We hedged on Ryan Blaney, and it didn't work out so well. If it was a top 10 pick for Ryan Blaney, then it would have been great, because he took a destroyed race car for the second Daytona race in a row and somehow or another made something out of nothing. We'll get in all that. We'll talk about F1 testing at Bahrain, which is coming up in the next few days, the one test that they're going to have prior to the start of the 2023 Formula One season. There's been all the teams have had their reveals or whatever. Some of them have actually revealed their cars, some of them haven't. So curious to see what will go on with that. 2 weeks before the IndyCar season begins at St. Petersburg. So probably got some news there as well. The Roundup will discuss Formula E in South Africa for the first time in Cape Town, and the World Superbikes opener at Phillip Island in Australia. And then Josh and I will preview what likely is the last race for Cup and Xfinity at Auto Club Speedway, because I have a hard time believing the way NASCAR has handled things, ISC, whatever they are now. The France family, that they're actually going to be around after this race. But to be determined. Josh will go and tell us everything about the iRacing Daytona 500 and all the other racing that is going on this coming week in the world of Sims. And then we'll close the deal. So, we start here with Richard going and winning the Daytona 500. He started 31st. He finished third in stage 2. He led 10 laps in the race, including the last one, the most important one. Prior to that, I'm trying to go through here because there was 52 lead changes amongst 21 drivers, so half the field led a lap. So that's pretty good, even with the way this race seemed to kind of not really have a whole lot of action. It was mainly up front with some of the runs that were going on. I can't really see where Stenhouse led earlier. Or no, he did lead the last 10 laps of the race. Okay, there you go. So that's it. He led the last 10 laps of the race to break a 199 race winless streak. That last win was the July Daytona race where he yelled 1776, we are the champs. And then that was when he was still with Miss Hummer even, I think, and she was still in the Cup Series. So that tells you how long ago that was. The top 10 in the Daytona 530 yesterday. Ricky Stenhouse, defending series champion Joey Logano, finished second, trying to go for his second Daytona 500. Christopher Bell gave the push to Stenhouse to basically save that one for him. Bell gets his best plate track finish. Christopher Buescher finished fourth, led the second most laps in the 500 yesterday. Alex Bowman started on pole and finished fifth. AJ Allmendinger sixth. Daniel Suarez seventh. Ryan Blaney eighth. Ross Chastain ninth. And Riley Herbst in his Cup debut finished 10th. Other people to kind of look at here. Travis Pastrana started dead last and finished 11th. Kevin Harvick, who caused a wreck during the race, ended up finishing 12th and was involved in one. Zane Smith, as I mentioned, for the trucks also, he finished 13th. Cody Ware 14th. Truex is 15th. He caused the wreck that ended Bubba's day, basically. Three-time Daytona 500 winner Denny Hamlin finished 17th. Kyle Larson got hung out late. He was in a position possibly to go and race his buddy there and finished 18th. Kyle Busch was leading late in this race as well, trying to get that elusive Daytona 500, and he will have to wait another year just like Martin Truex. And Brad Keselowski, who led the most laps in the race on Sunday with 6 times or 42 laps, and won stage 1 in the process. So a tough deal for Brad. I think he really thought he was going to get that one, that elusive Daytona 500, but didn't happen. Defending race winner Austin Cindric, 23rd. Try and go through here. Former 500 winner McDowell, 28th. Jimmy Johnson in his return finished 31st. Bald Spot Dylan, 33rd, former winner of the race. And Clyde finished 38th. The Guns N' Roses car with Eric, that Jones boy, finished 37th. And Tyler Reddick, 39th in his first race for 23-11. So, yeah, I mean, Ricky Stenhouse, at the end of the day, he found the position where he put himself in position where when it counted, Josh, and it's now he's won 3 of the 4 old school restrictor plate races. The only one he hasn't won is the playoff race in Talladega, which is basically the Winston 500 of yesteryear. That's the only one he hasn't won. Of course, Atlanta now theoretically is considered a restrictor plate drafting track too. So Ricky Stenhouse is now in the playoffs. He's got a free roll. If it goes to 19 winners, we'll see how he holds up like it did last year, but it is a winner that may have not been expected. There wasn't a whole lot of people outside of Ricky Stenhouse himself and JTG-Daugherty that were looking at him to get the W from 31st position. But homeboy went and was able to hold on there on that last yellow. They nailed the yellow light at the time, and he was leading over Joey Logano just by a few feet, and it's all that mattered. He's now a Daytona 500 champion, Josh.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. I mean, Ricky Stenhouse, Daytona 500 winner now, and you talk about his restrictor plate racing, prowess over the years, being able to, back in the 17 car, of course, first career win came at Talladega, the win at Daytona in 2017, and then he, of course, won the pole back in 2020, and had a good car that year, 21 as well. Probably had a good car that year as well, and just how strong he's been on this type of racing. And so with all that said, it's actually kind of crazy to me that he ended up being plus, I think 3,000 were his odds. I think that's what they were listing on Fox yesterday. And given all what he's been able to do over the years, and how maybe he might not be like one of the absolute favorites like Logano or a Hamlin, but he's, I think, right up there with them now, of course, or at least right behind them in terms of his ability on these tracks. And it's crazy how low his odds were, but I think at the end of the day, when he's able to find his way to the front, he knows how to get the job done, and it's just a matter of being able to be there and survive to be at the end of one of these deals at Talladega or at Daytona. So he's been able to prove himself in the play tracks, and now he's found himself in victory lane once again for only a third time in his career. But now he has a chance to go to the playoffs with the 47 team, and then not only that, but they probably will get more boost and more exposure throughout the year, and also bigger purse now because they've made the playoffs, and especially with the charter system. So that's actually a pretty nice bonus at the end of the day for that team, single car team. So as long as they continue to maintain their position throughout the end of the year, should be able to make the playoffs for Stenhouse. And I think he certainly, especially with the way things are set up now in the playoffs, I think he at least has a decent shot to make it. As making it as a in the round of 16 at the very least. I think he can make it through that round and up to the round of 12. So that's assuming that he makes it, of course. But I think he could definitely qualify for that. But he also he was 20th, I think, at one point towards the end of the race. But they had a really good pit stop at the end during green flag pit stops, and I think that really helped him get to the front, and then made a move as well on the the first green white checkered. They pushed Joey Logano all the way out past Kyle Busch, but then he made a move on the backstretch to go and take the lead, and that's what you had to do at the end of the day. It was shuffle the Fords out. You had to make a quick move to the left. We saw it a couple of times towards the end of the race. AJ Allmendinger was able to get the Fords out of the way. Kyle Busch was able to get the Fords out of the way at the end. And then you saw Stenhouse do it there right before the last caution that set up the final green-white checkered. So, I mean, the Fords, they were dominant throughout the race. Keselowski, Stewart, Haas, I mean, they didn't lead as much, but they were, trying to help. Logano, Cindric and Blaney weren't there as well, but they didn't really have an opportunity. But, Fords, they always team up really well at the plate tracks or the super speedways. The other teams, they're a little bit more independently minded, I think, and don't team up until, they really have to. But the Fords, they have the right idea, but they just, for whatever reason, all got eliminated at the end except for Logano, and now he's second place while Ricky Stenhouse Jr. celebrates his win at Waffle House. Maybe he's copying Trevor Lawrence or something, so we'll have to see. But definitely, I think he's and at the end of the day, I do think he's still a deserving winner, even if the finish ended up being under caution, having to go to review, which was a rather quick review. There wasn't a whole lot of replay, but it looks like Stenhouse was the winner. So I mean, it was a pretty entertaining 500, and even though it was a lot of green flag racing, but at the end of the day, would rarely see a lot of green flag stretches to kind of get it over with. And then also just because I prefer green racing over lots of crashing and all that stuff.
Yeah, I mean when it comes to Daytona and super speedway racing, having that much green flag action, which was, like mentioned earlier, nearly 90% of the race was outside of the stage cautions, and one yellow, which was the yellow that was on lap 119, triggered by Kevin Harvick, and involved Reddick, Truex, Blaney, Clyde, Eric Jones, Kyle Busch, Larson, and Suarez. But in some way, shape, or form, of course, the Jones, Elliott, Reddick were eliminated on the spot. Harvick was able to keep on going. Harvick was involved in the wreck in lap 183. That took out a bunch of Fords, along with two of his teammates. Truex was involved in that wreck as well, and Keebler, Gibbs, and Jimmy Johnson, along with McDowell. And then the big one that really precipitated the overtime finish, or it was past overtime, it was in overtime anyway, the lap 204 incident that involved, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 13 cars. So that was 13 cars, and at that point there was 35 cars, I think, still on the racetrack at that point. So that's pretty bad there. In the end, Ricky Stenhouse, JTG-Daugherty, they usually put a lot of energy into these super speedway races. They know that it's one of their opportunities. Stenhouse has been known for being good on super speedways, very aggressive, but he knows how to get around there. It's his first race with Mike Kelly again as his crew chief for like the third or fourth time. So it's interesting that the combination that at one time won 2 Xfinity championships in a row, back together now in the Cup Series for a second team, because they put him back together at the 17 car and it didn't go very well. Now he's back at JTG-Daugherty, and they're more than likely going to make the playoffs, unless it gets as random as it was last year. I mean, when you look at who could win, that hasn't won before, other than Keebler and Gagson, you could go through all the other guys that won prior to. There was 15 winners prior to the playoff starting, and then the whole entire first round was people who hadn't won a race last year up to that point. So that became 18, and then they ended with 19 winners at the end of the season. So we'll see what happens with that. Logano wanted that win there. I think he would have been the first. I was just trying to think about it. I think he would have been the first defending series champion to win the Daytona 500 since Dale Jarrett in the year 2000. Because Jimmy Johnson was the only one that came up, but then he won the championship after winning the Daytona 500. Both times he won it. That's the only other instance where I can come up with. For some of these other guys, you look at the Roush guys. I think that's one thing. Standout teams and performances. I got to say, RFK last year they won both duels, but I don't think it really went as well on Sunday per se. This time they were that duo of Keselowski and Buescher was up there most of the day making moves, and they led the most laps. I mean, 74 of the race's 212 laps. So they had a game plan, and they were running up front, but it didn't work out there late. But Brad Keselowski, after another terrible performance at the Clash, coming to Daytona with good race cars, do you think, Josh, that's a sign of things to come? I mean, they're still behind in terms of their flat track program, obviously. So Phoenix in a couple of weeks may not be so good. ACS is kind of in between because it's a rough surface. But I think their 1.5 mile program started coming around. And even at Martinsville last October, they were kind of making a little progress. So is RFK now going to make that next step? Can Brad Keselowski break his losing streak, winless streak? Can Chris Buescher advance into the playoffs this year for the first time since he won his first career race back in 2016?
I mean, it's an interesting point that you bring up there, and I think it's possible, but I wouldn't really base that thesis on the Daytona 500 alone, and that's partly because, last year, Keselowski led the most laps there. He led, in last year's edition, he had led 67 laps. This one, he led 42, but then in this one also, Chris Buescher had a little bit more of the laps led share, of course, leading 32 laps yesterday in the 500. So it could be a sign of things to come, but I want to see how they perform, especially Keselowski more so than Buescher, how they perform at Auto Club and Las Vegas and pretty much all the rest of the tracks. The first 12 races of the schedule, minus Talladega, I think, and Atlanta, because Keselowski wasn't really all that strong until maybe the last quarter of the season last year, and I think Chris Buescher, they started to figure things out by the middle of May, and then they were competitive throughout the summer, and then they ended up winning at Bristol, so in the fall. So I think for Chris Buescher, I think he's probably I'm not going to say an outside chance to make it into the Cup playoffs, but I think he should at least be a strong consideration for somebody that could make it be in the initial 16 car field when they decide the playoffs down in August, at the end of August and September. So I think Buescher's probably closer to being there than Keselowski. But I think, as an organization, they probably still have a little bit ways to go until, they can be considered on the level of their other Ford stablemates like Team Penske and Stewart-Haas Racing. So a little bit more work to do, but I think they are on the, up and up as far as, being able to be considered a stronger team in NASCAR once again.
Yeah, good points there. I mean, for Brad, I think it's more about him. It's true what you said. He needs to go and move the team forward. There's a lot of aggro going on, I think, on the Roush part of it, same way as Mr. The King had a lot of aggro now that he doesn't have any day-to-day involvement in the organization that is now called Legacy Motor Club. But the fact is, if Keselowski's move is going to make sense, there has to be progress in this second year. It was a different time when Tony Stewart took over what became Stewart-Haas Racing, and he only had him and Ryan Newman. It was the Gen 5 car. It was a much different series than what we have now. So maybe I think it's exponentially more difficult to make up that deficit if you're that far behind. But Keselowski is a champion. He took this risk. in the end, there has to be a payoff. They're getting sponsors. I think they're also trying to look at the possibility of, whether it's expansion or buying out a team. Like I would assume that when it comes down to it, with this whole charter system and the way things are, Rick Ware Racing and the BJ McLeod team are probably the most likely, and then the Spire cars. Those are the 5 crappiest cars in that have charters, essentially. I don't know if there's a website that actually shows the 3-year, because nobody ever talks about it, that they show their performance year to year. That would be something, because that's something that back when they initially implemented the charter system, if you're in the bottom 3 for 3 years or something, I don't know if it was 3 years in a row or for 3 years in general, something in a 3 out of 5, then you'd lose the charter. So I don't know how the hell Rick Ware still has charters, and I don't know how Spire still has charters. I mean, what is it? Ty Dillon blew up 30 laps into the race yesterday, I think, or whatever, 26 laps into the race. How the hell do they have 2 charters? I mean, Junior could go and take that car, what is the 77, they could take that charter and do something with it. There's people that actually want to expand, and 2311 wants to expand. You have Roush, RFK wants to expand. There's other organizations that could do a better job with those charters than some of the teams that have them. But, I mean, it's neither here nor there, I guess, early in the season. We'll see what happens with them. The 3 of the guys that were in the Final 4 finished in the top 10. Logano and Bell, 2nd and 3rd. Ross Chastain finished 9th and he won a stage. So that was good start for all of them. Of course, Clyde wasn't so lucky. The Daytona 500 hasn't exactly worked out too well for him in his career so far, but who knows? He is a Hendrick driver. He did have a fast car on Thursday. Once he was the only non-Hendrick car, or only Hendrick car that wasn't a part of that whole qualifying deal, which saw Alex Bowman get on the front row 6 consecutive years and win his 3rd pole for the Daytona 500 in his first race with new crew chief Blake Harris, a.k.a. The husband of Caitlin Vincey, also known as one of the luckiest men on the planet. But yeah, they go and do that. Allmendinger gets a top 10 finish, which is, good for him. He's done well in this 500 before, driving for Petty and a couple other organizations. And Herbst, for as terrible as he is, he literally and figuratively, based on his family's business, gets a top 10 finish in his first career race. We'll see how many more races he'll be running. I would venture, they already said that Todd Gilliland's going to run 4 races in that car to make up for the races that he loses to Zane Smith. Pastrana, he said this is going to be one and done, so credit to him to finish 11th in what he says is going to be his only Cup start. Zane Smith, I mentioned earlier, 13th. Sign of things to come, I figure, for him. If you're outside of the Penske organization, which, unless they decide to put him in the 21 car, I think Stuart Haas is definitely looking at him with the situation they have. They only have one guy locked down for sure. I don't care what Eric Almirola's contract is. If Smithfield decides that they want to sponsor somebody else and they like Zane Smith, they'll cut Eric Almirola a check and say, hey, buddy, we love you. You did a great job for us all these years, brought us into sport, but we're going to go with the future here. And the number 1 Ford prospect is the future, along with Chase Briscoe and Gumby and Blaney and whatever. Stuart Haas is going to be one to watch this year in terms of the free agency. Some of these moves that were made this weekend with both guys signed back at Trackhouse, which isn't shocking. Bell is still a free agent. There's some other players out there. You got Martin Truex may not be back, may quit, so that's a possibility. I think one other piece before we move on. We have to go through the picks that we made last week for the 500. I tried to take pictures of all my bets, but it had other information. I didn't really want to do that, but let's see. I picked Kyle Busch to win and Bubba as a wild card. I picked Bowman to qualify and both of us picked Bowman to qualify on pole. We're off on our outside pick. I completely whiffed on my cars going out, not making the race. We were both wrong on those. You picked, was it Bowman? Yeah, you picked YRB to win the race here, and then I was like doubling down with YRB. I didn't follow up with the Kyle Busch pick yesterday when I was making my Gagson wild card, and then the Tate Fogelman algorithm spit out Corey LaJoie, who had a great truck on Friday, fell just a little short there. But I think Kyle Busch, the way he ran yesterday, it's probably one of his best performances in the Daytona 500 in his entire career. And he was right there. It looked like he was going to win the race when him and Dillon were working together. Once Dillon got sent, same way as with Buescher and Keselowski, once they lost their teammate, it basically went away for Kyle. But I think it keeps on feeding into the narrative of Kyle Busch is wanting to prove everybody wrong and wanting to do something that he hasn't won a lot of races recently. Ever since Adam Stevens and him broke up as a combination, he hasn't really been the same Kyle Busch. Now he has his family basically set. He has the 2 kids. Brexton's racing. He's now downsized his truck organization. But he looks like what Kyle Busch for most of his career yesterday. And he's not known as a great restrictor plate racer, but you put him in an RCR car, give him Randall Burnett and that whole crew that won 3 races and was basically the team that worked with Tyler Reddick. And now you're giving a guy who's really hungry. He is someone, it could get really crazy. It's got vibes of 2008 to me with Kyle Busch when he moved from Hendrick to Joe Gibbs and they had moved to Toyota, and he won 8 races that year, but then the playoffs went to hell for him. It has similar vibes in that he's going to win a lot of races. I don't know what you're thinking, Josh, but it just, to me, the way he is, the way he's handling things, the way he's kind of walking around these deals, and it seems like Kyle Busch is back, and it's going to be a problem for a lot of people.
Yeah, I mean, I can agree with you on there, and to be honest, for my sake, at the end when Keselowski had the lead and Buescher was pushing him, and then Kyle Busch and Austin Dillon were 3rd and 4th. I was honestly wanting to see Kyle Busch win the race, and it's interesting because for years I've been kind of a Brad fan in a way, more so when he was on Junior Motorsports back in the Xfinity days and in the first couple of years of his Cup career. But I feel like just the fact that the Fords, like the entirety of Ford, was like dedicated to getting one of the Fords a win, and whoever was up in front, and that ended up being, even though they weren't teamed up as a Ford train at that time, like I didn't really want to see a Ford win the race and Keselowski, with Keselowski. So I was actually wanting to see Kyle Busch. Crazy enough, I'm not really a Kyle Busch fan, but wanted to see if he could try to make a move to see if he could get up into the lead, and damn near had it. And I think they had the right strategy on the first green white checkered restart to start side by side so that both RCR cars could control their lanes on the restart, and then Busch would drive down and pick up Austin Dillon. So I think that probably would have worked, but then they just got separated on the on the restart there, and once they got separated, it was going to be hard for them to get back together and maintain position because the other 2 lanes with Stenhouse and Joey Logano had a huge run coming off of turn 2, and they were able to steal it back from Busch and Austin Dillon there. But as far as my picks, I picked Ryan Blaney, but I think I don't know. I was going by the odds and is going by what I had seen from Blaney at restrictor plate tracks, super speedways over the years, and he just wasn't really competitive, to be honest. Even before the crash that he was in, he was kind of like back in the middle of the pack, and just never really got up into or really cracked the top 10 really. And the only time really I think they even had anything of note on him was the coming to, I think, the end of stage 2 or stage 1, AJ Allmendinger put a block on the field trying to stay on the lead lap, or was stay first car lap down, and I think him and Ryan Blaney made contact a little bit, and they did not crash. But other than that, Blaney wasn't really up towards the front of the field, and really until his crash, and probably might have been able to save it, but just overcorrected a little bit, which it's hard to save a car in these next gen cars too, with the way the steering rack and pinion system works and everything. And it's a little bit different than the old style that we had before 2022. So it's kind of tough for if you're someone who likes Ryan Blaney or Ryan Blaney fan. So have to try again next year. Of course, they ended up making it all the way back until lead lap, but I mean, I feel like they were just that finish being in 8th was really just a product of being able to make it through the damage and make it through all the crashes that happened leading up onto the last lap. So they were able to benefit from that, but they did not have any speed or anything after they took damage, and you saw how their car was handling the fact that they had a tire come apart like it did after their accident. So it tells you how critical it is to have a good functioning car, especially at Daytona. But that's how it went. Then of course Noah Gragson, I thought maybe he might be a wild card with the way he has been on plate tracks, the way he's been in the 62 the last couple of years, but just wasn't really there at any point during the race. So I was kind of a miss on that one. But then the LaJoie one, I felt like that was a good pick, based on what I was able to research. I mean, besides the fact that the algorithm picked it, I mean, I was doing some research and I was like, well, let's go with Corey LaJoie there. And I was able to pick that one. And, for a bit, I mean, he was up there, in the top 10 for a bit. But ultimately, Corey LaJoie didn't make it into the top 10. So, didn't get the finish that I was hoping to see there. But otherwise, I mean, picks on paper were good, but, just not the right picks, of course. But the qualifying picks, I mean, obviously, I think you probably could have bet on Alex Bowman. I should have bet on Alex Bowman to win the pole, because that's easy money right there. I saw a post on social media. I think somebody bet like $250 or something, and they got like a couple thousand because I forgot his odds or whatever, or no, they bet like $20, I think, and they got 250 from it. That's what it was. So that's a pretty decent return there for a guy that, and surprisingly enough, I thought his odds were a little low for the fact that he'd been on the front row the last 6 years and everything. So a little bit surprising there, but probably a surefire pick as any in NASCAR that you'll get to make there. And then Hamlin, didn't make it onto the front row, but it was just a little bit off on speed, I think, on the Toyotas overall. But just a good picks overall. I think Larson, of course, the other Hendrick car on front row, which not surprising there. And then my picks to go home, Zane Smith. I mean, ultimately they ended up making in the other Smith, Chandler Smith. Was off the pace pretty early and didn't make it in. Connor Daly should not have made it into that race, but he was just a benefactor of the crashing that happened late on into the clash. So, or the not the clash, but the duels. Obviously, Austin Hill took damage there, and probably would have made it in if it weren't for that accident in the duels at the end. So of the second duel. So if it weren't for that, then we wouldn't be speaking about Connor Daly making it into the field. But he made it into the field and was pretty much a non-factor the entire race. They just didn't have speed, and I think it was evident with how their car was handling it on Thursday that even if they did qualify their way in, which they did, they really weren't going to be any factor at all. So they still have the Money Team Racing still has a lot to improve on to in their limited schedule or whatever schedule that they have, that they can even prove to be at least somewhat competent or competitive. So just on the fact that cars bouncing up and down a track that shouldn't even see that kind of stuff because the pavement isn't even really worn out. kind of crazy. You see a car jumping up and down like that on a super speedway with like Connor Daly's did. So, Daly made it into the race, of course, and qualified in. So, good for him. Made the Daytona 500. Only one of 62 drivers to make it into the Daytona 500 and the Indy 500. So, that's a pretty good field to be in, regardless. So, yeah, I mean the picks. I mean we had them. I think some ways we were probably right, and then other ways maybe a little off. So, it is what it is. And later on we'll make the picks for Auto Club. And everything, and hopefully those picks will be a little bit more normal sounding at the end of the day on Sunday, but we'll have to see.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, when it comes to Daytona, it's a wild card. Same way as when we get into Talladega, and I guess to a lesser extent Atlanta. I mean, the money that I won yesterday, the bets I made, I mean, we went over the ones listed over here on our page, but the only bets I won yesterday were the ones that I put in on FanDuel. They had like a 5-driver pick 'em, and you pick whoever's going to finish the highest. That's the only ones I won on. Joey Logano, if it were for a few feet or a couple tenths of a second, that would have paid out. I know you mentioned about Ford not winning the race or not winning the race. That would have actually got me a few bucks back there. I had picked Harrison Burton and Corey LaJoie to finish in the top 10. Corey LaJoie was moving up easily early in the race and then kind of went away. There was a odds boost of any two of Clyde, Blaney, and Hamlin to finish in the top 5 when you consider that Blaney has finished second in this race twice. Denny Hamlin's a 3-time winner. Clyde is generally able to do well on super speedways, more at Talladega. I figured that wasn't a bad one, but didn't come off. Blaney, we mentioned his issues, and Burton. I took Jimmy Johnson. It was a nice number. I figured, hey, what's the difference? Let's see if he can go out there. I mean, Burton's number was really good at 65-1. Bubba was at 18-1, which I thought was pretty crazy. But so I bet Blaney as well at 12-1, and of course Briscoe at 40. But he had the lead early in the race, or he got it up there after that first pit stop sequence because he had pitted with the Toyotas, and he was able to cycle around. And the Stewart-Haas cars had a lot of speed, but it just didn't have it all together when it mattered. The 41 car, I think, was the 10 and the 41 were just a cut above, I think. Kevin Harvick, I think, was biding his time, but things didn't work out for him there. So we'll move on to California, ACS, whatever, this coming weekend for the Cup Series. We'll get into the Xfinity Series race, the Beef It's What's for Dinner 300, which saw Austin Hill become a repeat winner at Daytona in an Xfinity car. That's 3 wins at Daytona since he's won a truck race there as well when he was driving for Hattori. John Hunter Nemechek finishes second. Justin Allgaier finishes third. Hill and Allgaier won the stages. They went 5 extra laps, so 312.5 miles was the total distance. Parker Retzlaff driving the 31 for Jordan Anderson gets a top 5 finish. The former driver of that car, Myatt Snyder, finished 5th in a Joe Gibbs number 19. Riley Herbst actually finished 6th, so 2 top 10 finishes for Riley Herbst. That's something. Joe Graff Jr. finished 8th or 7th. Ryan Sieg 8th. Cole Custer 9th, and Justin Haley 10th. So 4 Fords there, all Stewart-Haas connected in some way, shape, or form. Finished up there. You look at some of these other people that led a lot of laps. So Josh Berry led 17 laps. Sam Mayer led 14, but Mayer caused a couple of incidents. Sheldon Creed got wrecked early in the race there. He led 5 laps. Hemrick got wrecked 19 laps into the race. So a year ago, he had won the pole, won the first 2 stages, and then disappeared. And then this year, because of Sam Mayer, got taken out, and him and Blaine Perkins didn't have a chance to even compete, really. There are some guys I think that probably, Jeffrey Earnhardt, of course, had a lot of aggro towards Parker Kligerman, who started second in this race. They were kind of going after it, and his stupid spotter, Earnhardt's stupid spotter, was going off on Twitter. But that's besides the point, I guess. Austin Hill gets the win. Not shocking. RCR always brings good cars to Daytona, and Allgaier, they're the two dominant figures in this race. The junior motorsports cars, 3 of the 4 were up there doing work at times. The only one that really wasn't a factor was, of course, Buckshot Jones, but he finished. So in terms of the championship, I don't think it is a whole is going to make much of a difference. I mean, I think it's something where Austin Hill has good momentum, and John Hunter Nemechek getting out of Daytona with good points is a good start for him in his chase for an Xfinity title. He fell short of that truck title 2 years ago in the final race. He has the momentum. They're the lead team at Joe Gibbs Racing. They want to win that championship there, but of course they're outnumbered because of the number of competitive Toyota vehicles versus Chevys and Fords. I mean, Sammy Smith ended up finishing 19th, so a little struggle for him there. Just wasn't in the right place at the right time. I mean, at the end of the day, there was 26 cars on the lead lap, so you're kind of SOL in that sense if things happen to you. But three legitimate championship contenders are in the top 3, Josh. And then you start kind of going down the list a little bit. Cole Custer getting a top 10 finish to start the year. Chandler Smith going and finishing 12th. Mentioned Buckshot, who finished 14th. So those are some of the guys I think we're going to look at as people that could compete for this championship. Sheldon Creed now has a big deficit to make up early in the season, along with Daniel Hemrick. But we'll see what happens at ACS for them. But Austin Hill, now a 3-time Daytona winner in Speed Week's time.
Yeah, of course. I mean, Austin Hill, he's been pretty good on the super speedways so far in his Xfinity career. So it's no surprise really that, he was up there competing for the win on Saturday in the Xfinity series. And he just knows how to stay up front despite, being, in with RCR. I mean, they've been pretty good on the super speedways for a number of years in Xfinity, so they know how to stay up front. So it's not surprising at all. But on the other hand, junior motorsports. I mean, at one point towards the end of the race, they were all aligned. All 4 of their cars aligned together, and then a couple of laps ago, Justin Allgaier makes a move and undercuts Josh Berry to take away second. Which ended up not working out, and then slowly they actually eliminated themselves, which I thought was a little interesting how that played out, and ended up eliminating Brandon Jones out of that, and then later on, Allgaier and Sam Mayer, they couldn't stay together on the last lap, and then that allowed Austin Hill back into it along with John Hunter Nemechek, and then led to the last lap incident with Mayer getting flipped onto his roof there. So junior motorsports, for Dale Jr. being the master or one of the masters at super speedway racing, kind of disappointing the way that they played out at end of the race. Poorly executed, I think, on their part. And then, of course, Josh Berry as well, running out of fuel to end the race, and actually was in sight of the leaders. I think if you look at the replay, he was within a second or two of the leaders coming, on the last lap. So, if Sam Mayer could have been a little bit more patient, could have, instead of trying to block, could have picked up Josh Berry or something and used him as a pick potentially. So, got to think about that a little bit there. And sure, Dale Jr. looking at the tape probably want to have a talk with his drivers and crew chiefs on, what they should do to try to win Daytona next time. So they'll have to go back to the drawing board there. But the other drivers like John Hunter Nemechek, great start for him. And of course, you talk about who the contenders are this year in Xfinity. I think he's definitely going to be one of them. The rest of them, Cole Custer, led a lap. So he probably, coming off being demoted back to the Xfinity series, expect him to still be a contender there. Josh Berry, of course, mentioned him already, running out of gas and everything. So I still think, he's going to be obviously a contender, but maybe not on the restrictor plate tracks on the Xfinity series. Sheldon Creed, expect a lot out of him this year. Ended up, getting eliminated early on with the crash. Same thing with Hemrick, of course, won the championship a couple of years ago, getting eliminated pretty early on lap 20 and a crash there. So, some of these drivers here kind of having mixed results. Chandler Smith, rookie in the series now, finished 12th, so didn't really do too much in this race. Some of the drivers, and of course, Allgaier finishing third still, even though he probably should have won or been up there. So definitely a lot of these contenders had mixed results. I think at least two who are expected to be the top contenders in the series finish in the top three, and then some of the other guys that I'm expecting to have pretty big years or at least have significant impact on the series had mixed results. But this race was probably about in terms of cautions. There was a lot of incidents throughout the race, but it wasn't too much in terms of crashing. It was more just of spins and whatnot. So you still had stretches of green flag runs towards the end of the race and everything. So there's still that. Justin Allgaier, of course, mentioned him a bit now, but did end up, I guess, in the technically what was the big one in the middle, after stage one, got spun out and everything, but still recovered and still managed to finish up in the top five in third place. So still recovery from that, but on the other hand, I guess when you look at the incident count, considering what actually happened in those incidents, fairly clean race. So they just have to figure out a way to finish under green in one of these events, because none of them finished under green at all. So just have to be able to figure that out. But overall, pretty solid race in the Xfinity series this weekend at Daytona.
Yeah, and like we talked about with the Cup Series, this race at ACS coming up this weekend is going to be a better read on what to expect over the long haul for their series, and the likes of Josh Berry, the Junior Motorsports crew. You have the SHR team with Custer, who's the defending race winner, and then the Toyotas and the 20 car specifically. But I think Sammy Smith's somebody who's going to pick up. He's going to, because he has the support and sponsorship, but he has the driving ability too. He's going to be somebody that's going to be a sneaky guy to look at as the season goes on there, amongst others. In terms of Xfinity, like you picked Allgaier, Josh. I picked Kligerman, so that was a whiff. Balding was your wild card. Clemens was mine. He kind of wasn't anywhere this weekend, which was shocking. And then Cold Custard was the Tate Fogelman algorithm pick. So unfortunate, but hey, I think Allgaier was up there. You had Kligerman had a fast car. Cole Custer was up there. It wasn't a real factor. So be it. The Truck Series race, as mentioned earlier, was basically a stop-start cluster and didn't really have much of anything. Zane Smith won it. The NextEra Energy 250. They only ran 79 of the scheduled 100 laps. Oh, wow, they're going to bring back, that's interesting. There you go. Tyson will be the sponsor of at North Wilkesboro for the truck race, so that'll be a cool connection there for the old Tyson. They used to have the Tyson Holly Farms 400 for many years there. The Craftsman Truck Series opener, of course. Great to see Craftsman back in the sponsoring the Truck Series. Zane Smith gets the win over Tanner Gray. Christian Eckes, Colby Howard, I think that has to be his best finish of his career, driving for Robaugh. Enfinger 5th, Ty Majeski 6th, Tyler Ankrum 7th, Corey Heim 8th, Matt Crafton 9th, and William Clyde Elliott 2nd, finishing 10th, running for Jake Garcia, who will be 18 in time to run at Las Vegas here in a couple weeks' time. Or he's going to be turning 18 this week, so happy birthday to him there. There's 2 Jason Whites in this race. So there's a Jason, Jason A. White, who used to be the one who drove the gunbroker truck for years. And then the Canadian one, Jason M. White, drove for Rayum and finished 21st. Trying to go through here, the Kyle Busch Motorsports trucks, two truck of Nick Sanchez started on pole, ended up losing track position later in the day, along with Jack Wood, his teammate, who started third. What do you call, trying to look for the other one, Chase Purdy started 10th. He had a cut down tire, or else it might have been a 1-2-3 for the Kyle Busch Motorsports trucks. They were up there, led 22 laps of the race. So, I mean, they made their presence felt there. Corey LaJoie, I mentioned, he led 19 laps. My fault. Nick Sanchez didn't even lead a lap, or Jack Wood. I was mixing it up with other people. Corey LaJoie led 19 laps in this race and had a piece that could have won, I think. Him and Eckes tied for the most laps led. Zane Smith led 17. Tyler Ankrum led 15 and looked like he had a chance to join, what's it called? I think that idiot stick who drove for, what's it called? I'm forgetting, Brett Moffitt. I think Brett Moffitt won for that 16 truck at Daytona. I might be wrong, but I'll go and check here in a minute. But I know Austin Hill did. So that was one of the best runs that Tyler Ankrum's had in a long, long time. He won a stage. Eckes won first stage and Ankrum second. But Zane Smith getting the win, giving himself a nice start to his defense of the Truck Series championship, Josh, with another win at Daytona.
Yeah, of course. And yeah, this race, really hard to follow this one too, because of the constant stop and start with the rain. Started out with the rain, and then a couple laps later, more rain, and then at the end we had rain again, and that ended up being the demise of the race. But not Chandler Smith, but Zane Smith starts off his title defense by winning, and won this race a year ago in Daytona, and now wins again. So could be the start of a second championship run, considering everything he's been able to do so far in the Truck Series. So this time around, he gets it by rain, kind of wins by default. So really tough to tell to see what people had there in that race to be able to win. But he was able to be in front at the right time to get that win. So not really too surprising there. But yeah, I mean, there was opportunities for other drivers. Corey LaJoie, I think in specific, I think they used strategy to get up into the lead, and they did a good job, I think, for the most part, until finally at towards the end, before the final rain caution, they got shuffled out of the lead and ended up finishing in 23rd. So kind of a disappointing end to their race after the type of effort that he put in throughout the event. So of course it's just a one-off, so it doesn't really mean anything. But on the other hand, would have been nice for him to get a win in the top 3 series. But I think kind of like we were talking about in the Xfinity series, the same guys that we kind of expect to be there throughout the year, finish in the top 10. Of course, Zane Smith, of course, winning the race. I think Christian Eckes has a chance to in the number 19. I think he has a chance to be something in that series, and I think he could end up being successful there in that ride. Grant Enfinger, of course, he's been around for many years. Definitely think he could have a chance to be competitive throughout the year, of course. And number 23, Ty Majeski, Tyler Ankrum, they've been pretty competitive. Corey Heim on the rise. Matt Crafton, still there as a veteran. Ben Rhodes in 11th as well. So, and Carson Hocevar in 12th. So a lot of the top 12 in this series definitely had opportunities to lead and or just be up front, and they were able to do that. So in Truck Series, it doesn't seem as competitive as the Cup Series, but there are definitely a lot of names here that when you look at the finishes, they've been pretty consistent in the top 10 for a lot of it. So this finishing order here in the Truck Series may be actually reflective of the end of the year standings and the average finishes for everybody throughout the year. So interesting when you look at it that way. But I think really the story of this race was just the rain. Of course, difficult start and everything, and then canceled the end of the race. So unfortunate the fans had to go through it. But on the other hand, at least there wasn't any other rain that took place throughout the rest of the weekend, and that was the only instance of it. So glad that that was the only race that got affected by weather. But on the other hand, would have liked to see no weather throughout the weekend and actually get in some racing in the Truck Series. But for the most part, the racing was fine. You can probably make an argument that it was the best racing of all three series that weekend when they actually could race. But I think at the end of the day, I think all of them had pretty good action when you consider how they played out. So, the Truck Series, we'll see how they do their next race, whenever that is, because Truck Series seems to be more inconsistent. Well, in a couple weeks they'll be in Las Vegas, so won't get to see them for another couple weeks. So, Truck Series, I think we'll see how they do throughout the year. But Zane Smith begins his early title defense exactly how he started off his first title.
Yep, absolutely. And somebody to look at, I mentioned earlier, for who might be in line to be a Cup driver here next year. I would think that he is definitely in the mix for that opportunity with some Ford team, whichever one it may be. So it'll be something to look at as we move forward, as the season goes on. So, picks review, we'll go through that before we move forward. The KBM trucks were fast, and I'm surprised. I don't think they usually show out in qualifying, but hey, first time with the Chevy bodies, and they were able to do that. But I think the inexperience showed there when it counted for those guys relative to some of the more veteran talent that they've had prior. We'll see at Vegas how that all works out, especially since one Kyle Busch will be driving his own 51 truck at Vegas in a couple weeks' time. The picks, let's see. So I had picked Brett Holmes to win and Corey LaJoie as a wild card. That doesn't seem so bad, the wild card pick. Holmes was kind of non-existent, even though he's won at Daytona or Talladega or whatever before. William Clyde Elliott, good pick by Josh. I think he got strung out there late, but those McAnally trucks were really fast. Pastrana had a solid weekend, to be fair. Getting 2 top 15 finishes. He did say he's not going to run any more Cup races, but if Cody Efaw goes and calls him to go and run a truck race, then he'll probably take that opportunity. Fellow driver at Nice Motorsports, Lawless Allen, was the Tate Fogelman algorithm pick. Unfortunately, he showed us why he is Lawless Allen. He was non-existent. So that is that. Xfinity and Cup we will be at California ACS here this coming week. You got Denny Hamlin on motorsport.com saying that messed up pit strategy cost him the Daytona 500 shot. Interesting. In terms of IndyCar and Formula One, well, Formula One will be testing this week, as I mentioned, for 3 days. The only test they will have prior to the opening round of the 2023 season. They've made changes to the cars in terms of raising the cars 15 millimeters to prevent or reduce porpoising. And then there's Red Bull cost cap breach, which I don't think they really handled that well, but to be determined in all that sense. Ferrari did show their car in full and ran it at Fiorano, a lot more black on the car, but then they have the old school Ferrari lettering on the rear wing. That'll be this Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. They'll run for, for 7.5 plus 9.5 hours each day. So that will be the only testing, at least with a group testing for the whole season. They'll be running at Bahrain, and then they'll, of course, open the season there. They still haven't posted who's going to be driving for which car as of yet, but if you wanted to find that out, definitely get in on motorsport.com to check that out. I'm trying to see what else in terms of Formula One. The tickets for Miami are available if you have enough money to sell in Oregon. Honda reliability fix will open up strategic options. Okay, well, they didn't really have that much of a reliability issue after the first couple of races of the season anyway. They should have had more. It would have been more interesting. Lance Stroll had a bike accident, and so he'll be out of the preseason test. We'll see how that affects him relative to his new teammate, Fred Alonso. All these teams, of course, some of them showed their cars, some of them haven't, as I mentioned, to be determined what they'll bring out at Bahrain. But we'll definitely bring it up next week. The GSP, how it all went in terms of IndyCar, and they're talking about the 100 Days to Indy docuseries. Last week, Tony Kanaan said that he would retire from IndyCar after the Indianapolis 500 this year.
And we'll believe it when we see it.
Absolutely. It's exactly what I was thinking, and that was exactly what I was going to say. So good call on that, Josh, because I don't think he's ever going away. He's like Brett Favre, except he actually is likable, and he has had a great career. And Indianapolis, he's a specialist there. It goes back to the old days of Al Unser Sr. and Gordon Johncock, and Johnny Rutherford would always show up at Indy and run, a one-off. Tony Kanaan, I think, will probably keep on doing that until the end of time. They were talking also about the Detroit Grand Prix venue, which is back in the city itself proper. So that looks like there's going to be a lot of good viewing areas, it says, based on what they're reporting on motorsport.com. Nick Cassidy tested for Ganassi this past week, and in terms of testing times, the Andretti team was pretty fast at Sebring, but also Pato O'Ward was up there in terms of speed. So something to look at for as we lead up to St. Pete, which we will preview next week on the GSP, first race of the IndyCar season. And then they'll take a month off between that race or 26 days, so it's not a full month, but 3.5 weeks between St. Pete and the Texas weekend at that dump. Anything else that you wanted that you saw out there in regards to the news in terms of IndyCar F1, Josh, as we lead into the roundup?
Yeah, there hasn't been any real news lately in IndyCar. F1, I think everybody's getting back into the swing of things there. But we'll have to see, once they, have preseason testing. I think we'll have a better idea of, who's got improvements next year or for this year, and who might be a good pick to watch this year in terms of teams. But I think right now everybody's just trying to get their cars out and make their unveilings and everything. And on that side, IndyCar haven't really, other than what you mentioned, hasn't really been much since their testing a couple of weeks ago. So a little bit light on that front, but it's not that far away before either of those series will be back underway, so we'll have to wait too long to get really too deep into it for sure.
Yep, that's for sure, and we will give you a full preview of the 2023 IndyCar series next week on the GSP. Go through the whole field. 27 full-time cars racing this year, so that's the deepest field in a long time. Even with all the other financial stuff that's going on within IndyCar racing. So that'll be something to see, the competitiveness and the qualifying at these road courses, how that'll all work out. It's time for the GSP Roundup here, and we will first start with the Formula E World Championship. They have had a busy start to their season this is going to be the last race of that swing prior to a big-time slowdown, really. They'll run after running at South Africa and Cape Town this coming weekend. They'll take a month off prior going to Brazil, and then it'll be another month before they run their Berlin doubleheader. So things are going to slow down really in a big way. Pascal Wehrlein, off of 2 wins, a second and a fourth, leads the championship by 18 over Jake Dennis, who had a non-point score in India last time out. A win and 2 seconds for him. Jean-Eric Verne won the Indian E-Prix to vault himself up into a tie with Sebastian Buemi in third, 2 former champions of the series, of course. Nick Cassidy is fifth, tied with Sam Bird, his teammate, or no, not teammate, but they're corporate teammates in a sense because of being Jaguar powered. Jake Hughes, seventh. Bird and Hughes got into it in India, and neither of them scored. Rene Rast, 8th, Antonio Felix da Costa, 9th, and Luca Di Grassi, 10th for the Mahindra team. So we'll see what happens there in South Africa. The Porsche factory team is up by 24 points over the Andretti Autosport team, which has Porsche power as well. Envision Racing is powered by Jaguar, and they lead their factory outfit by 17 points. McLaren is got 53 points. Of course, they're basically what was left of the Mercedes Formula E team, but now they're run by McLaren and have Nissan power. The Nissan team is struggling this year. I forget what Maserati Racing was called prior to their going and changing over, but they used to be. They were now is a team that what's her name Susie Wolf was the team principal for prior to their rebadge here. Struggling right now as well, along with Team Apt, which is the other Mahindra team, hasn't scored yet. You'll see if some of those things change. We'll go over that next week in the roundup. There was an unveil for the Monster Energy Ford team of Tickford Racing for Cam Waters, the Monster Energy Mustang, the brand new Gen 3 Mustang. It looks awesome. Great looking car. We'll see how fast it is. There's been issues with the BOP or whatever they call it in terms of trying to balance out the cars, both the Mustang and the Chevy Camaro. But it's a good looking piece for sure. This Mustang and Gen 3 car for the Tickford Racing, and the Camaro in the Red Bull trim was debuted a few days ago as well. So we're seeing a lot of them coming fast and furious now, and we'll definitely get into it here in the next few weeks. Let's see here. So the World Superbike Championship, getting into it, last year, Alvaro Bautista returning to Ducati goes and wins the World Championship, ends up beating Toprak Raskat-Lioku, the defending world champion, by 72 points, and multi-time champion Johnny Ray by 99. So they will race at Phillip Island this weekend, and then they will race at Mandalika the following weekend, and then they will have a long gap between that race and running in Assen in the late April. So that's great scheduling. As it stands this year, it's a 23 rider entry list for what's it called here? It says Pettergini World Superbike, who has announced a field solo for Isaac Vinales. All right, so there you go. So that's what it is. Pettergini as part of his old Vinales Racing. So there'll be one. Yamaha has 6 bikes this year. Ducati has 5. Honda and BMW have 4. Well, they said that he isn't running the number 1, but he is running the number 1 is Alvaro Bautista. And then he'll be on the factory Ducati along with his teammate Michael Ruben Rinaldi. Danilo Petrucci returns to the world stage after running in the Moto America Superbike Championship. So he's running a satellite Ducati for Barney Spark Racing The HRC team is the same combination of Iker Lecuona and Javi Vieje, who came from both of them came from MotoGP. Alex Lowe's stays for another year, along with, of course, Johnny Ray. Tom Sykes returns to World Superbikes, and he'll be running a private Kawasaki. And let's see, who else is on a Kawasaki? It's not clear. Yeah, those are 1, 2. Yeah, Oliver Koenig, whoever he is. Yeah, so then in terms of the Yamahas, Bradley Ray for Moto X Racing. And there's also Lorenzo Baldassari for GMT 94 Racing. Then you have Toprak Raskadlioku and his teammate Andrea Locatelli. Toprak goes back to his number 54, and Locatelli will be running number 55. And then Dominique Argater and Remy Gardner to take over the seats at GRT Yamaha, which one of them was held by Garrett Gerloff. He moves to BMW this year, so the one American in the World Championship will be on a BMW, along with, let's see here, Scott Redding, who's riding for the factory team, Scott Redding and Michael Vandermark. And then the other BMW is Loris Baz. That'll be the teammate to Garrett Gerloff. And we went through all those. Honda has mentioned 2 factory riders, and they have Hafiz Shirin or whatever, who used to be in MotoGP, and he still sucks. Eric Granado on a private Honda as well. They're teammates. And yeah, so those are the 4 Hondas. Mentioned Yamahas, the Kawasaki's, BMWs. So that's where we're at. I mean, the Ducatis, I mentioned 3 of them. Axel Bassani will be back this year on the number 47 for Moto Corsa. Philip Odell, as I mentioned. So that's the, 5? And then who's this? 6. They said there were 6. I must have missed one of them, but oh well. We'll see what happens. So the last 3 world champions are all back. There's some new riders in the series this year. You have riders move to different teams as per any silly season. We'll see what Remy Gardner can do in World Superbike. Argater is considered a big-time talent, so can that second Yamaha team go and push the factory effort? Can BMW make a step forward? They haven't been up there in a while with some new faces on their bikes. And can Kawasaki come back after getting beaten by both Ducati and Yamaha last year? We'll get into who did well at the round at Phillip Island to start the season in next week's episode. So going from there to the previews. We are going to preview the races at ACS, which I figure are which will be the last time they'll race at ACS because of all the rumors that are going around in regards to that racetrack. There will be 40 cars for 30. There's a 40 for 38, right? It says there 40 for 38 at Auto Club for the Production Alliance Group 300. Differences from last week's entry list to this week. Austin Dillon will be driving the number 10 for Colleague. They don't have anybody announced in the car along 13. They don't think I thought they said they weren't going to run the 13 car on the West Coast, so they might end up withdrawing it. Or no, it is withdrawn, along with the 36 DGM car. So Ross Chastain is actually driving the 91 for DGM Racing, interestingly. So somebody to look at there. LeBay is going to go and drive the 28 for RSS Racing. So that's a good deal for him. A little slightly better car than what he's been driving. Garrett Smithley failed to qualify for Daytona, so he'll be looking to get into this show. I think Ryan Vargas also failed to qualify at Daytona, so trying to get in. Emerling Gase will have CJ McLaughlin racing for them again, or he raced last week somehow, and he didn't actually cause a wreck, which was something. Probably that's overachieving for him. Kyle Sieg will be driving the 38 and Ryan Sieg will be back in the 39. Joe Graff Jr. will be in the 19 for Joe Gibbs Racing, along with then Tyler Reddick will be running for Sam Hunt in the 24. Any other change? Raja Caruth will be in the 45 this week. They needed to call a sub in for Cesar Baccarella because he got sick. I'm not remembering who they ended up calling in to go over here. Stephen Parsons. There you go. Stephen Parsons super subbed for Cesar Baccarella there. I think that's it in regards to the changes. Raja Caruth will be in there. Timmy Hill is not running for Xfinity points. I guess he's running for truck points. So he'll be running the number 66 again this week. So going into this race last year, of course, Cole Custer won for SS Greenlight Racing because they had a connection with the Stuart Haas. That was their first win in, I think, their team history. Cole Custer has made a name in the Xfinity Series on these rougher surfaces, Josh, and definitely after a top 10 finish at Daytona, he wants to go and come out and get that first win out of the way, lock himself into the playoffs. But you look at John Hunter Nemechek, Sammy Smith, and then the Junior Motorsports crew, along with the likes of Sheldon Creed and Daniel Hemrick, who need to have a great run. And then the fact that you have 3 Cup drivers in this race in Chastain, Reddick, and Dillon, it's going to be an interesting show for sure. What are your thoughts on this Xfinity race at California, and who do you think is going to win in wild card?
I mean, yeah, it's going to be an interesting race for sure. And I mean, when you look at California Speedway, I mean, it's pretty rough on tires, and it's going to be interesting. People that use the bottom, it's wide, it can be fast. You can use the top, the middle. So there are a lot of lane choices, and there's going to be a lot of strategy on, exactly when to go and when to conserve your tires, and things can get pretty strung out as well. But I mean, this race has in this field, has a lot of interesting players in it, and I think guys that are really good at managing their tires over the course of a run and have good speed, I think are going to be the ones to look out for. I'm going to go with John Hunter Nemechek. I think, Toyota, I think post Ty Gibbs, I think, they have to make a statement. I think they've got the speed, and I think John Hunter has, proven himself on the truck series with Kyle Busch Motorsports. And so, I think he's going to be able to go out and win this race. I think, he's got a lot of potential here. There certainly is somebody that can go out and win this race, and be the first Toyota drivers to win post Ty Gibbs. Wild card in this one, I'll go with Parker Retzlaff. I want to see what he's able to do. Driving for Jordan Anderson Racing, Parker's done pretty well. He comes from the iRacing ranks, of course, and of course that's the track of the week on the Xfinity Series. So I'm sure he'll probably put in some time there on the sim just to get reacclimated and everything, and get some extra practice, and at least practice racecraft on the sim at California. And there's going to be a lot of wild restarts, I'm sure, so he'll get that practice on the sim as well. So I'll go with Parker as a wild card and see what he's able to do this weekend here. Would more than likely end up being I agree with you on that one, the final Xfinity race on the big track, and not unsure if they're still going to build the short track, so very well could be the final Xfinity Series race, sadly, at Auto Club Speedway.
Yeah, I mean, it's where it's going. I don't know. They're not going to race there next year. And so when you leave a track, unless, you have a groundswell of people in the local area, or there's different supports, like what happened with North Wilkesboro or Rockingham, perhaps. I mean, you're not really going to stay around. But who knows? Maybe stranger things have happened, but I think they're going away of Riverside. For me, you picked JHN, which is a good one. I'm going to go out and choose. I'm going to choose. I'm going to go with. I'm actually going to go with Tyler Reddick. I'll pick Tyler Reddick. Sam Hunt Racing has been up there. They've had chances to win races last year with John Hunter Nemechek at the helm of the 26 at that point. Now they're running 2 cars this year, the 24, which will have gear wrench sponsorship. I think Tyler Reddick has made a name for being great at this type of racetrack here in Homestead. Won 2 championships in a row by winning Homestead. And so I think a Cup Series driver wins. Like last year, I picked Tyler Reddick to get the victory. In regards to a wild card selection, somebody that would be off the beaten path a little bit. I'm actually, you know what, I'm going to do it. I'm going to go with Alex Labbe because he's in a decent car. The RSS car has Stuart Haas support. Now they're running 3 teams, so maybe the talent is being spread a little thin possibly, but Alex Labbe has shown over his career he's a former CASCAR champion, and he's a great road racer. I think this is the kind of place where somebody who has that kind of driving talent, and you have a veteran crew chief in Steve Addington, what probably amounts to a one-off. Who knows what can happen there? You know, if you can gamble a little bit, and they have long green flag runs, maybe you hold off on taking a set of tires, and then I think Anthony Alfredo tried to pull that off last year in this race, or I think it was this race that Anthony Alfredo tried to do it when he was running for Hour, and almost won the damn thing. So that's a possibility. So Reddick to win, and Alex Labbe is the wild card. Alrighty, so we'll go with that. We'll move forward to the Pala Casino 400 at Auto Club Speedway, which only has the 36 chartered cars showing up this weekend. And those are the only things that are really changing are sponsors, I would assume. There's sponsors. Yeah, Oh Richard will have Ralph's on his 47. Then Noah Gagson will have Sunseeker Resort, while Eric Jones will have Allegiant again, second time this year. He ran it at the Clash.
Kyle Busch is going to have Lucas Oil on the side, so
yeah, that'll be different. They haven't run. I don't remember a Cup Lucas Oil scheme in a while, so that'll be something. Cindric last year ran Menards, so he'll have that on there. Kubota will be on the one for Ross Chastain. Dow Coatings for Bald Spot. Gear Wrench for Kevin Harvick. The Castrol Edge will be on Brad Keselowski. Pala Casino will be on the 17 for Chris Buescher. Farm Smart, whatever that is, will be on AJ Allmendinger. The Worth sponsorship on the 12 for Blaney. Sport Clips for Hamlin. Trying to go through here. Sirius XM will be on the 20 car for Christopher Bell. Reese's Fine Foods for Martin Truex. Dex Imaging on the 21. AAA of Southern California, which is the usual sponsor for Logano at ACS. Lidos for Bubba Wallace. Leaf Filter will be back on the 31 for Justin Haley. The 38 will have the Long John Silver's sponsorship. Reddick and Ty Gibbs will be both running Monster Energy Toyota, so that'll be lovely. Nations Guard will be on the 77 for Ty Dillon. American Hartford Gold on the 78, and Freeway Insurance for the 99. So I'll go and start here. I think last year Larson won this race. It has and he got into it with Clyde. It's a home track for him. It feeds right into his wheelhouse, really. Got close at Daytona. He was in a position to possibly go and pull it off finally. Eric Jones had a great qualifying run last year in this race and was up front for a while. So I mean, it kind of is a more wide open race because of the roughness of the track. I will go with Kyle Larson to win at ACS. Repeat. I don't think it's that far off the beaten path. I mean, the guy is just really good there at these rough surface racetracks. The wild card selection for me will be, because I think it's anybody who's outside of the top 20 in points, right? So I can pick Eric Jones. So there you go, because he finished 36th or whatever at the Daytona 500, 37. So last year he did a really good job in this race and kind of showed some of the progression that GMS team had gotten with the influx of cash. And now he's got a more competitive teammate, rough start to the season, so they're going to want to go and get themselves back in the mix. So Eric Jones, of course, who won the Southern 500 last year.
Our owner, Jimmy Johnson's home track as well.
Exactly. So that would be a good one for Eric Jones if he could go and pull it off. So that's those are my choices. I think the racing in the Cup Series, there's going to be a little bit more. I think it'll be a little closer than the Xfinity. I think they can spread out a lot more in the Xfinity Series, and they have limited tires. But I think this race should be a little better. But who knows with that? But I'll go, so Young Money to win, and Eric Jones, that Jones boy as the wild card. What are you looking at, Josh, for the Pala Casino 400? Who you feel like can go and get that last victory and maybe get a opportunity as a wild card?
Yeah, well, you picked Kyle Larson, who got his first career win in NASCAR at Auto Club Speedway back in 2014 in the Xfinity Series, and I'm going to go with the other Kyle in this field, Kyle Busch, who got his first career Cup win all the way back in 2005 at the Fall California Speedway race back then. And I think, he's got a lot to prove this year, of course, but, also last year, the number 8 car was probably the dominant car in the field for at least the first half of that race, and until maybe the first, through 2 stages, but they ended up having some problems and crashed out of the race and did not finish. And I think if it weren't for that, Tyler Reddick would have won that race last year. And so my thinking is, they've had a pretty good feel on the setup on that car last year, and I'm sure they can come back and bring back a similar, setup there. And I think Kyle Busch, he's been good at this track in the past. Of course, like I said, first career win back in 2005, and then of course won in 2013, and then 2014 he won at Auto Club Speedway. So he knows how to get it done at this track. Has won several times as well in the Xfinity Series over the years. So I think he gets his first career win with RCR on the last race on the big track at Auto Club Speedway. So I'm picking Kyle Busch to win on Sunday. And I think for my wild card, I'm going to go with Ryan Preece. He's also out of the top 20 right now in points, but it's a rough track, and he's proven himself on rough tracks before. Remember, he won at Iowa Speedway with Joe Gibbs Racing a couple years ago in Xfinity, and he's a short track guy. He knows how to manage his tires, and I think big track like this, I think with the rough surface, I think is very beneficial to him, and I think he definitely can be a driver that can be a wild card pick. Certainly look for him to flirt with running in the top 10, I think, throughout the race. And I think if he can keep it in one piece, as long as he's got a good handling car, he, could be a dark horse, threat for the top 10. So definitely, look at him being a wild card. So those are my picks this weekend. Should be an entertaining race. I think California is one of my favorite tracks really in the series, and kind of sad that they're going away from the 2 mile format and potentially going away period, or going to a short track think it's the wrong decision. And I think the solution, they could at least, like you said before, Dale Jr. said it before, just pave the back stretch, pave the front stretch to make it smoother there, and just leave the corners as is, unless like the pavement starts falling apart or something like that. But I've enjoyed the racing over there, over the years, and the way that they're able to move around and find grip, whether it's on the top or try to run all the way down onto the flat part on the apron. A lot of entertaining races there in NASCAR, of course, IndyCar as well. They had their best race that nobody ever saw in front of 1,000 people in the middle of the summer on NBC all the way back in 2015. That was probably one of the best races I've ever seen ever. Shame that they never got IndyCar racing back at Auto Club Speedway, but would have been really competitive, I think, for sure with that and Pocono. But shame that it's looking like it's potentially could be going away. So we'll see what they end up deciding to do. So hopefully both races are really good and maybe make the executives rethink their decision. With how much action that could happen at this racetrack over the this next weekend.
Yeah, honestly, I do agree with what you were saying about paving the straightaways and leaving the corners. I think Atlanta's proof of that. They were able to make it work for a long time in a much with temperatures and a climate that wasn't really as good. But unfortunately, I don't think that's where it's going. They should have an IndyCar race there. I don't care how rough it is. They should have an IndyCar race there. They have that gap for a month. They could run a ACS. Oh, you can't run two races in close proximity to each other. I don't really buy that. If you really wanted to, you could run it, but it's IndyCar, so it's probably why they need to be incorporating more ovals into their situation there. All right, Josh, it's your time. I'll give you the floor for the sim segment, of course. Let us know how the iRacing Daytona 500s went for you and what else we can look at in terms of sim racing this coming week.
Yeah, of course. Start off with the first iRacing Indy 500 that I ran on Saturday afternoon, around noon on Saturday. Went and ran the fixed series race, and initially I thought that that'd be my best chance. Everybody on equal setup, based on how I've been able to run in the Cup cars or in the open setups series on iRacing. It just seems like someone always figures out something on the open setup side in iRacing for the super speedways, and someone just figures out how to get the speed and everything. So it's really hard to keep up with. But I decided to go with initially the fixed series on Saturday or afternoon, like I said. Started out P13, qualified there, and really just try to maintain my track position throughout the first quarter of the race. Didn't really do too much, stayed within the top 20. Just tried to ride around and survive. In most part, we were single file in that edition of the race, and then later on, just try to maintain throughout the race and stay within the leaders. I think initially we stayed out on the first couple of pit stops, didn't pit with the leader or the lead group, and probably that's maybe where things should have been doing that all along, because you stay in the same draft pack as the leader. You don't get separated or anything like that, and definitely you increase your chances of winning, I think, in the iRacing Daytona 500. And so that was a mistake there, not pitting with the leaders that stayed out and pitted with the next group. So I was still able to be in the top 10 for the most part, but then later on, around like lap 110, lap 120, just after halfway, green flag pit stops once again, and overshot the entry to pit road. Didn't get it wood down enough to make it into the pit lane. So I entered onto the grass for a bit, just didn't slow down enough and didn't shift down into second gear fast enough for whatever reason. I think it was just, I don't know, I guess I was just worried about getting run over from behind or something like that on entry to pit road, that I, forgot to shift correctly and, put enough brake pressure. So went out into the grass for a minute, or for not a minute, but for a few seconds there, and ended up having to take a penalty. So I stayed in the box for an extra 40 seconds after my pit stop, and ended up losing a lap. But then spent basically from lap 120 all the way up until like lap 185 trying to battle for the lucky dog. And I don't know, we had like, I don't know if we had any, I have to look back at the results, but I don't think we had a caution that whole way until lap 185, and just managed to get my position back in time for that caution. And just having to fight with the leaders. And I don't really like trying to have to do that and interrupt the leaders, but I was just trying to have to draft my way up there to get in front of all the other lap cars that are on the same lap as me to get my lap back. So I was able to do that, and then got back onto the lead lap, and then just fought my way back from 14th place. And not only 14th place, but in iRacing, lucky dog has to start at the tail end of the field. So I had to do that, and managed to pick my way through the lap traffic and started to get to the top 10. And then just some of the crashes started happening there, people fighting, and managed to avoid all of them, I think. And so just all of that happening and everything, I managed to be in the top 5, or not top 5, but close to it, and be in the top 10 at the end of the race. And really come down to a green white checkered, I think, in that one. And started off, I think, like in 9th place, and really I wanted to be on the outside, because really the whole race, like the bottom tends to get jammed, as people are trying to manage the draft and stay tucked in line. So the bottom always like jams up, and then the top can move up into the lead, and then a lot of times they'll stay down or move down into the bottom, and that's what caused some of the jamming up. But just wanted to be on the outside there, because I felt like that's where I'd been most comfortable making moves, in my preparation leading up to the race, and just wasn't able to do that. And so coming to the last lap was like in 8th or 9th place, and just ended up staying committed to the guy in front of me and everything. And then we just tried to draft with him, and then the guys to my outside on the last lap, they drafted together, and then one of them ended up getting draft off the leaders, and they were able to split 3 wide, but then they touched, and then everybody started crashing. And then I managed to miss that, but then I made contact afterwards, and then spun out across the line and ended up 5th. So the fixed series race, ended up 5th. Probably wanted to be a little bit closer than that on the last lap to really have an opportunity or be on the outside and make a move. But yeah, it was a good event. Just made a bunch of mistakes, I feel like, and probably could have gotten it some of that back if I didn't overshoot the pits after halfway and everything. So still, at least got to finish 5th and on the lead lap. So technically, that is my best finish, I think, in iRacing Daytona 500 competition in the game. So did that. I'll show a replay, I guess, in a minute. I probably should pull that up so you can see the finish and everything. But the other one, actually, let me just go ahead before we talk about the Open Series race. Let me see if I can grab that one, and then I'll put it on so you can see it. I'm sure you already saw it, but just so we can go over it on the show. Let me see here. Yeah, go back and have to cut through this to get to the So let me see here. I'll put on the thing. Share screen. iRacing Daytona 500. Okay, you can see this. Yeah, so put it on there. Mute the volume. But anyways though, going into turn 3, this guy here, number 6, he gets a draft off the 2 leaders, and then fakes to the outside, then shoots the middle here, and then 20 here goes with him, and then they make contact here and then spin out, and then we just go to the apron, and then I get contacted from behind and then spin out and everything, and finished in 5th. So that was the first one on the fixed race. But yeah, it was fun and everything. Just needed to be a little bit closer. And I think if had been able to get on the outside leading onto the, going into the final lap, maybe we could have been in that position on the outside to take a draft and split the middle there, and everything. And looking at how that played out, if the guy, like, he had made the pass, and if he just didn't make contact with the guy in the middle, or to his outside, he would have won the race. So, and it is what it is, though. But we'll come back again, I guess, next year. But the other one, the fixed or the Open Series one, started in second because I was able to find a setup on there that actually worked online. I was able to download a setup and everything, and so started second in that one. And then obviously a good qualifying setup, and so you really just managed to stay in the top 10 throughout the entire race. And there was a good portion from I'm going to say like maybe like after the first pit stop, and then all the way to like maybe like lap, I don't know, 135 or so, is like up in the top 5, top 3. So managed to really be up there for a bit and just manage position and stuff, and then fell back a little bit as pit stops happened, final pit stops started to commence and everything. But after lap 150, before that, I was really just managing my position, like I have been saying, and didn't really race too aggressively. But, once lap 150 came around, I knew it was like, okay, well, it's time to go, and got to position yourself for the final pit stop, which was going to take place with about 10 laps to go or so. So I wanted to be in position, good position up front to be able to do that. And I wanted to make sure I was up, close to the lead and everything like that. And was really pushing hard on the outside, just felt really confident being able to push and draft and, be up into the lead and everything. And had been able to do that throughout the race whenever I did try to pass or anything like that. But just tried a little too hard, I think, though, because I ended up crashing out with about 22 laps to go. I'll pull that up here. This is the replay of it. So I'll start off here because this is like on the lap leading up to it. I'm on the outside here, and I got the guy in front of me is actually a lap car, so I actually got a little bit of help there because that's not for position, so I'm technically the first lead lap car in this lane. But just had a good run and was really pushing here, and then made it up all the way up into third right here, and was really just trying to stay behind him. And I felt, so I'll pause here, but really just felt like we would be in the lead on the backstretch. So I was really pushing hard, and then we'd cut down to the bottom and stay there and try to stay there until until the final pit stop. So that was my thinking. But then a couple seconds later here, car just pushed up high, and then it snapped to the left, and then spun out here, and then just got pushed back into the wall and everything. So it's pretty much the end of our race there. Couldn't believe it. And then guys like, what the hell? And so that's basically how that happened. And then, ended up having about, 8 minutes of required repairs and everything. So stayed in the pits. But then once that was finished, drove back out there to try to finish. And actually, surprisingly, even though we still had a lot of optional repair time left, still had a good draftable car and everything. So ended up finishing in 26th place there in the Open Series race. So started second and actually led one lap, a single lap there. So I think that's the first time I ever led in the Daytona 500 on iRacing. But still, it takes a lot to win these races. The Daytona 500, like in real life, got to be in the right position at the right time, and got to either time your drafts well or time your blocks well, and just wasn't able to get there. And the first one that I ran, Open Series or Fixed Series, sorry. My goal was really to be in the lead group, going into the final lap, which I was able to do, but just wasn't quite in the right position there to execute the pass for the win. And then the other one, I felt like I had a strong car, but I think just pushed a little too hard, a little bit too early, and probably could have been a little bit slightly conservative there on that run, knowing I still had a little bit of time left, but knew I had to go and everything, and just tried to go for it. So that that's how it goes sometimes. But we'll come back next year, try to add the virtual certificate or trophy to the mantle, and along with the Indy 500 from last year, which of course no longer on iRacing as we've talked about. So just got the Daytona 500, and I think the Rolex 24 are the only real majors, along with the 12 hours in Bathurst. I think that, and the 600 and Southern 500. So there's a lot of special events, but the ones that I care about, there's only about maybe like 3 or 4 of them that I think I really care about competing in. But we'll see what happens if I have time later on this year or next year. So we'll just have to go through it and try and everything. But of course, had fun and all. So we'll continue to have fun on iRacing and just continue to go through it. So that's it for me this week. I think if I play iRacing this week, it'll be just Xfinity or Cup. If I can get into one of them, or trucks at Auto Club Speedway. And it won't be the last time iRacing races on Auto Club Speedway in the oval, so I'm sure it'll be there as long as they decide to keep it on there as a 2-mile oval. So try to hit that up maybe a couple of times later in the week. Need a couple of days off from iRacing after a couple of days of preparation, and then 2 days of running the Daytona 500 in a row. So I have to take a couple of days off to kind of just to take a break and everything. But I'll be doing Auto Club, I think, and maybe a couple road races here and there. So as always, if you are watching the YouTube stream and everything, you see the clip from that. Of course, that's on my Twitch channel, which is Twitch TV/USailor2, and go and watch that. And of course, the replay of that Daytona 500 Open and Fix are on there currently, and then I'll probably clip up the finish from that, my wreck from the other one, just to show the result of that. Probably clip that one and save that one off and everything. So have that up on there. So go on there, follow or like or whatever on the Twitch channel and everything. And then of course, if you want to see when I announce, or the link, when I post the link to streams, that'll be on, and all my other takes, that'll be on Twitter at JP Huffine, and we'll retweet that one on the show Twitter as well, Gripship Podcast. So go on there and follow and interact and everything. So it'll be where all my race takes and all my other takes on all my other interests will be. So go on there and follow JP Huffine, and of course YouTube channel where this will be on later in the week. Go on there, follow Gripshare Podcast, and go and subscribe, and go on there, like our videos, comment and interact and everything, and show support for the page. So that's all this week. Glad Daytona 500 got through it and everything, real life and in Sims. So always a fun time, whether you're participating in it or watching it. So there's always next year, and we'll continue on throughout the rest of the season here on the show and in real life. So
yep. So tough deal there in the one race for sure, where you're right there sneaking up on it. But hey, you're up there. You gave yourself a chance, so that's a lot better than a lot of them other guys that were in that race. So for that, credit, but it is tough. It's the truth. There's so many great names in the real Daytona 500 never won it. So the fact you won Indy takes a lot of work, and it also the same way to win Daytona and any of these other big races. It in a lot of ways it has similarities to the real deal. You can find us, as Josh mentioned, the YouTube page, of course, Gripship Podcast, where we have all the shows, all the streams. Then you can find the Gripship Podcast on Podbean, or basically anywhere you can get podcasts. You can find it at philipgmatthew.com. And you can find me at Philip G. Matthew on Twitter. That's essentially where I'm at. My Instagram, Philip G. Matthew 28. Mostly post bowling stuff there. That's about it. And we will be back next week for episode 158 of the Grip Strip Podcast. I want to go and get the schedule up there. I want to make sure I know what the schedule is coming up. All series, and then the schedule, so we can get into it. We'll, of course, review the races at California at ACS We will also get into the World Superbikes and Formula E, as I mentioned in the roundup. And then we will go over the testing at Bahrain. And so then that'll be this coming week. And then the following week will be in March. Yeah, so the following week we'll have Vegas racing there. So we'll go over the race at Vegas. We'll also get into the Formula 1 and Formula 2 opener and the IndyCar and Indy Lights or Indy NXT or whatever opener. So a very busy week upcoming for episode 158 of the Gripster Podcast. We will preview both Formula 1 and IndyCar, make our picks for champion, and in terms of IndyCar, we'll also make early picks for Indy. We won't make our we'll be able to amend them, but definitely make championship picks for both series and constructors picks for Formula 1. Go over a lot of stuff. We're getting busy now. A lot to go into. All three series, actually. I have Formula 1, Formula 2, Formula 3, and IndyCar, Indy NXT. Of course, there's Supercross going on, too, so can't forget that. I do forget that sometimes. So, seeing NHRA is about to come back, too. So, plenty of racing. Got off of football, now we're in racing time, so we'll go over all of that next week on the Gripster Podcast. Thanks, as always, to Josh for all great work and contributions, not only as right-hand guy and my friend and co-host, but also on the engineering side of the show, making sure this thing goes smoothly, and then and his iRacing, of course, being a great iRacer that he is. And then for me, I'll see what I can do on the bowling lanes this week. Keep on progressing. Don't kill myself in the gym, but keep on making progress there. Keep things moving in a positive flow. So with that, we'll thank you for listening to Gripster Podcast. For Josh, I'm Phil. Take care. God bless and goodbye.